when I listen to and knowing your story a little bit and understanding, you're uber intelligent, from a scholastic or being smart intellectually intelligence, you're definitely in an upper percentile. You've traveled the world, you've done so many things and created all this business acumen. Like you've done, from an outsider looking in, it's like Dhiren Master, genius, does shit, does math in his head quicker than most people will do it on a calculator, has a totally different view of the world, has a track record to prove it, living the dream, traveling the world, doing all of the things. So from the outside looking in, it's like, wow, what a cool cat, what a smart dude, what a great life. Yet you internally are kicking the shit out of yourself going, I'm a loser, I don't relate to people. Now, in that context, what I was would shine a light on is that, what you shared with Jim about the Jim Carrey quote is that we are the producer, the director, the writer of our life. It's a tough message to get to people, is that, our life is a reflection of the choices we make, the choices we don't make. It's a reflection of how we view the world, but also how we view ourselves. But it's all a choice. It's all a choice. So you finally got to a point, and it took you a long time to do that, which was to say, I'm looking at the world through a set of filters that most people don't relate to. Now, there's all sorts of reasons for that, but ultimately you're beating yourself up because you don't feel like you fit in. And then you realize, you finally come to a conclusion that goes, hold it. If people can't like me for who I am, then that's okay. We're not destined to be in relationship, or it's this type of a relationship, and then we move on. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. So when you think about let's say in the past couple of years, you finally came to a conclusion that goes, yeah, people just got to like me for who I am. And I'm okay in my own skin. I am okay being who I am. And ultimately, I will live morally, ethically into my values, and I'll align with those people that share those common values. Now, that was intended as a recap.
Yeah. And I'll add something to that. And you look absolutely right, Patrick, on all those things. It was a set of choices that I was making. And the one thing that all of us need, all the 8 billion of us on this planet, we all need to be felt as if we are loved. And one of the problems that I had was because I was being critical of myself, I did not love myself. And I was looking for that love from other people. Now, the reality is that, everybody else is also on a spectrum of kind of beating themselves up. And sometimes, we're all dealing with our own stuff. It's very difficult to kind of give love. And so if you're looking for another person to give you that love because you can't love yourself, you're always going to be constantly disappointed. And that was the light bulb moment for me. I was thinking, hang on, how can I expect somebody else to love me if I don't love myself? Whoa. Honestly, it was like, it sounds so blindingly obvious, but I thought, how can I expect that? If I don't love myself, then how can I expect somebody else to love me? And that was it. Because of course, is that, if I love myself, then, I'm not relying on somebody else, and I'm not going to be disappointed. I've only got myself to be, and I can, and I thought, yeah, this is it. And that I can choose to be okay, and actually not only okay, but love myself for who I am. And it kind of is that, it was very difficult for those around me to love me. It's very difficult to love somebody who doesn't love themselves. It really is, because they're constantly like, bleh, bleh, bleh. And so that was it. And then the moment I realized that, I said, well, love yourself. And of course, there are different reasons why people don't end up loving themselves, right? And in my case, is this, that. But the point is that for whatever reason, you end up not loving yourself. And I'm not saying in a narcissistic way, but just in kind of like, stop beating yourself up. And the moment that you realize that, and you realize that, if you start loving yourself, actually you become a lot more lovable. It's just really, it's so blindingly obvious, but my goodness, it was only, I've been in that state since 14, and it was only at 56, 42 years later that the light bulb dropped.
But why do you, when you think about that, Dhiren, and I got a number of questions that I'd like to unpack with you around it, because I think it's a very interesting and a good conversation to have for listeners that may be going through similar things.
Mm.
First off, if I asked you the question, what does loving yourself mean to you, or what does it look like for you, or what did you have to change to kind of get there? I know that can get a little bit deep or esoteric perhaps, but can you put some meat on the bone of what loving yourself really meant to you, how it shifted, or what is it that you had to shift about you?
So, so I'll try to articulate what it is. It's a very good question. Is I think the main thing is, I am who I am, and I can't be anybody else other than who I am. Because if I could be somebody else, I would be somebody else. But I am who I am. Number one, right? You are who you are. And number two is that all of us are trying to be the best that you can be, and we're all in a state of evolution. So I realized that, well, I am who I am. I know that I'm trying to be the best that I can be. There are things that I could be better at, and I'm working on them. But hey, I am who I am, and I can choose to focus on the things that are good about me, and I can also look at the things that I'm working on and saying, look, this is all work in progress, and at some point, that also will become better. And so I'm in a state of evolution. Everybody's in a state of evolution. It's like understanding and recognizing that a caterpillar is a perfect caterpillar. It's not an imperfect butterfly. And
Mm.
I am turning into a beautiful butterfly, but I'm a caterpillar at the moment, and I am what I am. I mean, a caterpillar is what it is, and it is what it is, and I am what I am, and I am.
So
Does that make any
let's
sense whatsoever? I know it's just like,
No, it's
whoa.
all good. It's all good. These are great conversations to have. Because it's so interesting for me when I have these kinds of conversations to see a view of the world, from somebody who I know is got all of this stuff going on, but you're dealing with all of the things that you deal with through the set of filters that you have. There's a fundamental, and it's something that I've kind of been very clear on. When we're being a contribution to others, when our purpose is to be a contribution where we're making a difference in the world that's outside of us, that
Mm.
really is, I think, the secret sauce, if you will, to having a very fulfilled and a great life, is if we can take that. Now, that isn't the case for everybody, by the way. Some people are just by design okay to just kind of go through life, raise their children, be a contribution with their own family, and that's fine. And I think that's great, as a matter of fact. The point
Yeah,
is that an individual like you, perhaps an individual like me, we want to be bigger, we want to be bolder, we want to make a bigger impact in the world. One of the acronyms I came up with in a meditation many years ago was success is simple, significantly impact many people's lives every day. So be a contribution. Now,
love it, love it.
in behind all of that, there's a part of it that says human need is to, what I said was, have significance. Now, I've used that language, and in a friend of mine, Alan Kahn, who is just an amazing personal and professional development coach, he said, Patrick, he says, I understand what you mean by that word, but what people really need and really are looking for in terms of how you're using significance is they're looking for acknowledgement. They're looking for appreciation. They need to know that they're being appreciated in the world. They need to understand that they're making a difference, and that is what is by nature the psychology of it. Now, where am I going with this? I'm not sure. But when you look at all of what you've gone through and you're seeking love outside of it, was it a case, do you think, of you searching for that acknowledgement? Somebody saying that you're amazing, you've made a big difference in our lives, we appreciate you, and that you weren't finding it, or at least maybe you weren't hearing it. So again, long-winded, but I wanted to set you
No,
up
no,
with
no,
some thoughts.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's get on the couch. Let's get on the couch and do a bit of
I love that.
a
Yeah.
bit of Freudian analysis on this. So look, the bottom line is that for whatever reason, me growing up as a child, I didn't feel that my father and my mother acknowledged or gave me enough feedback to say, good job. All right.
Mhm.
Now it's very important. I want to just focus on the words. Is that I didn't feel
Mhm.
that I was sufficiently acknowledged. Now, as far as they were concerned, is that they were doing all they could to acknowledge. But for whatever reason, is that as a child growing up, I didn't feel it. Right. So it's really important to understand is that is that of course my parents love me to bits, and I know that they do, and I'm living with them again. I know that they do, but growing up, I didn't feel it, and so
Mhm.
there was this constant kind of there was this kind of hole that I'm not having that validation, right? And unfortunately, this is the kind of stuff, and I was angry. I was angry about it, that what do I have to do to get a good job?
Mhm.
So and I was angry about it, but because I didn't feel I got the good job. No, I didn't feel I got the good job. Right? Of course, they're my mom and dad are incredibly proud of me. They always have been, and they've always been showing that. But I just didn't feel it. So you're right. Is that that is really important because you want to feel that you are contributing to, and be it that you are contributing to your family and giving your family love, or contributing to society, or contributing to your job, or whatever it is that you're doing, you want to feel that you're contributing and that you have purpose. Because if you don't feel you have purpose and that there is a point of your existence, then the automatic and logical conclusion of that is, why are you alive? And therefore there's no value for you to be, and you might as well just top yourself right now. Right.
Mhm.
So so without feeling that you have a purpose and a valid contribution, and you are getting that validation, then you'll end up with this way. So I think the chat was partially right, but I think also is that, and what I would just basically say is that validation, uh, the most important validation needs to come from you about you,
Mhm.
because you can't really rely on other people to give you that validation.
Well, I think that, as kids growing up, there's because and I think you may recall, maybe you don't, but, I I did what was called the Hoffman process through the Hoffman Institute.
Yes, I
And
do remember.
yeah, and so it's a great body of work, really life changing for many, including myself. But it really was about negative love syndrome. Now, that's kind of where it is, and that's not all of it. I'm not doing it justice in saying that. I'm not minimizing that, but that was a really impactful part of going through the process, which was understanding that our parents do the best they can. The
Mm,
negative love syndrome is that, from kind of inception or zero to puberty, we're really only looking for our parents' love. That's it. That's all we're looking
absolutely.
for. And
Yes.
and
And
if
that's
we don't,
all that matters. That's all that matters.
that's all that matters. It
Yeah.
is all that matters. And the negative love syndrome is, if we don't get that for whatever reason as kids growing up, and it's parents are always doing the best they can. Let's give parents, that leeway, is that they're always doing the best they can. And so that doesn't necessarily translate in a really powerful way as a kid. The point is this: we get older, we get out into the workforce. The whole one of the concepts of negative love syndrome is that we're always trying to impress our parents, even as adults. It's like,
Yes.
so I
Yes.
ask you this question, and this is a question I actually ask coaching clients, but I ask the question is that, here you are, you're 45 years old, you're 50 years old, you're 35 years old. How many decisions do you make in a day or in a week or in a month? How many decisions in your life are you making as a 40-year-old, let's say, that you make the decision, you go a certain way, and you wonder to yourself, what would mom think of this? What would dad think of that? Now, seems pretty kind of a normal thought process for many. They go, no, I think about it all the time. I think about, what would my dad say about this? What would my mom say about this? And then you ask yourself the question, why the hell does it matter? Your parents just want you to be healthy and happy. Full stop. That's it. That's all they want. And they may have a view of decisions you make, but ultimately, why are you as a 40-year-old caring what your parents would think? That's an interesting psychology, isn't it? But there is the negative love syndrome is, and I put this to you because you're very accomplished. I mean, you've done so much scholastically in business. You've done some really cool things. And it's the negative love syndrome is, look at me, do you love me now? This goes back to the question. So look at me graduate, on the dean's list or top of my class. Do you love me now? Look at this job I got, for this $70 billion company. Do you love me now? So we start to get into this world. And I know it is a little bit being on the couch, but it is such a dynamic, isn't it, of
It
how
is.
our life evolves. And it's not trauma. I'm sure your parents didn't beat you. So
no, not at all.
But that's my point, right? It is such an interesting kind of psychology to how we deal with things. So anyways, I throw that on the table for you to dissect the way you do.
You're absolutely right. There was a point right through my 20s where I was asking myself that question. And then I got married. And then, I stopped asking myself the question is, what does dad think? And then because at that point I realized that, it doesn't matter anymore. And I actually stopped asking that question. But then I started asking another question is, what does my wife think? Is my wife happy now with me? And this is the unfortunate thing. Unfortunately, she tended to be a glass half empty person. And this is the problem, right? Is I had dealt with my so I had a spot of therapy when I was 30, and I did deal with my mommy and daddy issues at that point. But then I'm swap them out with partner issues. And she just was just relentless. Partly kind of moving around. She didn't like moving around, right? She just wanted to stay in one put, and she didn't like the fact that I kept on changing jobs and blah 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 and all the rest like that. It was like, why can't we be normal? Why can't we just stay in one place? And why can't you be normal and have a 9-to-5 job and this and the other thing? And so, unfortunately, I'd replaced mom and dad with partner, and I think it's very important because, you can end up, dealing with one set and then end up replacing either with a partner or with a somebody at work or with a friend or perhaps the kids, whoever it is that you just, we have a tendency is that, until, and I think it's also to do with energy, right? So I had this kind of like, you can beat me up, a kind of, I'm a doormat written all over my forehead. So, and you kind of attract the energy that you are emitting and stuff like that. So, one of the things is that, yes, it can be, oh, what would mum say now? What would dad say now? And then it can be replaced with, oh, what is this person going to be saying now with me? And then that person goes, then it's somebody else. Is that, what would my line manager be saying to me now as well? So it's really important is that I don't, I mean, in many ways, right, is that each of those individuals was doing whatever they could do. They were doing whatever the best that they could do. But in many ways, is that how you were viewing it, how you were perceiving it, is that you were just replacing. The fact is that I'm a doormat written, and I had chosen to write I am a doormat. And it's only until I had to rip that I am a doormat off my forehead. And that took 42 years.
Wow. So fascinating, isn't it? I love it. Well, but you know what else I love though, Dhiren, is that what I think is so great, is that you got to it, number one. And we're all on our own journey. And, I remember years ago Stephanie asked me the question. She goes, so are you where you thought you'd be in life? And I kind of thought about that question. And this was many years ago. And I said, yeah, I think, I am actually. I would have just chosen a different path to get here. And she goes, yeah, but then you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be who you are.
Absolutely. 100%, Stephanie. Bang on.
And I went, oh, good point. So, the fact that, it took you 42 years or whatever that, to get there is really just what you bring forward is the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience that is
Oh,
very, very powerful. And I know that you love to make a difference in other people's lives, and you're sharing that.